Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we're going to get into the story of Aniah Blanchard. It's a really sad story, and I think it's something that really hit home for a lot of people.
Yeah, this one really got to me too, actually. I mean, going beyond just the true crime element of it, seeing a family turning their grief into action, into something that could really protect others, that's really powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And Aniah was so young, only 19, and really seemed to have so much ahead of her. And it's just terrifying.
Mhm.
Thinking about what happened to her, she was very aware of the dangers out there for women, too. Like she was always making sure to share her location with her roommate, Sarah. Even told her about her biggest fear, being kidnapped.
It's a fear that's so real for so many women, unfortunately. It just makes the whole story even more heartbreaking.
It really does. So let's start with Aniah's last known movements. Uh, she had been with her brother, Elijah, driving back to Auburn after attending a funeral up north.
Right, and on their way back, they stopped by their stepfather's house. Walt Harris, the UFC fighter.
Oh, right, yeah.
He was actually in training camp at the time. You can only imagine how he must have felt later, thinking back, wishing he'd insisted they stay the night instead of driving back so late. It's just that what if feeling that must be just awful.
Yeah, I bet. Hindsight, right.
Absolutely.
So Aniah and her brother continued their drive to Auburn, got back around 11 p.m. They said goodnight, and Aniah was just a short drive from her own apartment.
And this is where the timeline gets really important. At 11:09 p.m., Sarah texted Aniah just a quick, almost home. And Aniah replied, yeah. But then things take a strange turn. Almost 40 minutes go by, and Aniah still isn't back at her apartment.
So Sarah texts her again, asking if she'd gone out or something. And the reply is totally not something Aniah would normally say.
Yeah, the message was, I'm smoking a blunt, lol. So strange for her.
Totally. And then when Sarah tried to get more information, the text just stopped.
Aniah's phone went dark, and they couldn't track her location anymore. The panic really started to set in the next morning when Aniah didn't show up for her nannying job.
She was usually so reliable, always on time. So that was a big red flag right there.
Absolutely. And that's when everyone knew something was seriously wrong. That's when the search for Aniah really began.
Yeah.
Her family, friends, law enforcement, everyone was looking for her.
And they did eventually find her car, didn't they?
Yeah, but it was 55 miles away in Montgomery, and it was damaged. No sign of Aniah anywhere.
Oh, man. Just the thought of her family going through those first few days, desperately searching, not knowing what happened, it must have been agonizing.
I can't even imagine. And as the days turned into weeks, the investigations started turning up some really disturbing clues. So as the investigation went on, one piece of evidence became really important. And that was the security footage from that Chevron gas station, remember? The one that was just a few minutes from Aniah's apartment. And they saw her on the footage, just buying some chips and a drink, like a typical late night snack.
Right, right. Such an ordinary thing.
Yeah.
But it puts her right there, right before she vanished.
Exactly. It gave the investigators a place to start. And this is where things get even more scary. The police found someone who said they had seen Aniah at that same gas station, and they said they saw her being forced into her own car by a man.
So it wasn't just a missing person case anymore.
Right. It became something much worse, and the search for Aniah became even more urgent. They were able to identify this man later on as Ibrahim Yazid, 30 years old.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, his past was troubling.
What do you mean?
Well, Yazid was already facing charges for kidnapping, robbery, and assault. He was even accused of attacking a 77-year-old man pretty brutally.
Well, he was already out on bond for all of that?
Yep. And you can imagine how people felt when they found that out. A lot of anger and frustration. People were questioning the whole system. How could someone like that be walking free?
It's hard to understand how he could be out there potentially putting others at risk. And it seems like Aniah just crossed his path at the worst possible time.
It's just awful. So the manhunt for this guy Yazid was really intense. They eventually caught him in another state, hiding out in the woods. But even with him in custody, they still didn't know where Aniah was.
Yeah, I remember that. It was a relief when they got him, but still so much worry. Where was Aniah? Did they find anything in her car that connected Yazid to her?
They did, actually. There was some blood inside the car, and when they tested it, it looked like it belonged to someone who had suffered a life-threatening injury.
Oh, man. That must have been devastating for her family.
It was a terrible confirmation of everyone's fears, And then they had to face Yazid in court, still hoping, I'm sure, that Aniah might be alive.
That's just unimaginable, facing the person who you think hurt your daughter.
Yeah, it was really intense in the courtroom, a lot of raw emotion. Walt, Aniah's stepfather, he was really struggling to keep his cool, with Yazid sitting there. Yazid seemed totally indifferent.
It's just such a contrast. The family's grief and Yazid's lack of any remorse. So what happened next? Did they ever figure out where Aniah was?
Well, another guy came forward, Antoine Pfizer. He said that Yazid had asked for his help getting rid of some evidence.
Okay. And what did he say?
His story was chilling. He said he saw Yazid dragging something wrapped in a comforter in the woods behind a church. And he even said that Yazid said to him, "Tell me that's not a body."
Oh, God. That's horrible. Did they find her?
Yeah, they did. And after that, the focus shifted. It wasn't about finding Aniah anymore. It was about getting justice for her, building a case against Yazid.
It's just heartbreaking. At least her family was able to lay her to rest.
Mm.
But what about Yazid? Did he go to trial?
Well, the legal process was just starting. But while that was all happening, Aniah's family, they didn't let this destroy them. They were incredible, really. They took all their pain and turned it into something positive.
It's almost like her story became something bigger than just a crime. It became about her legacy, about making a difference.
Exactly. Walt, he found comfort in going back to the UFC. It was his way of honoring her, showing how strong the human spirit can be.
And I know Aniah's mother started a nonprofit, right, to try to prevent this from happening to other families.
Yeah, it's called Aniah's Heart. It's all about improving safety and supporting families of missing persons. It's a way to keep Aniah's memory alive and doing good in the world.
That's really amazing. And I think she was also working on changing the law, right?
She was. Angela really pushed for what's now known as Aniah's Law.
And what does that law do?
So Aniah's Law, it basically changes the way things work when it comes to letting people out on bond, especially for violent crimes. Remember how Yazid was out on bond even with all those charges against him? Aniah's Law gives judges more power to say no to bond in those kinds of situations.
So it's like closing a loophole that let a dangerous person slip through the crack.
Exactly. And it's really inspiring to see how Angela turned all that pain into something so positive.
Yeah, she really made a difference. So did Aniah's Law actually become, a real law?
It did. In November of 2023, it was officially enacted in Alabama. It's a testament to how much Aniah's family and the whole community fought for change.
That's incredible. A real beacon of hope. It shows that even after something so terrible, good things can still happen. What about the trial, though? What happened with Yazid?
Well, Yazid, he kept saying he was innocent the whole time. In March of 2023, he pled not guilty to 3 counts of capital murder.
Wow, so it's still going on.
It is. But even as all that plays out, Aniah's story is still so important. It reminds us how important it is to be careful to look out for each other. And it shows the power of a community coming together, offering support. And it's a story about love, about how powerful love is, even when facing something so awful.
It really makes you think. What stands out to you most about this case? What do you hope people take away from this deep dive?
For me, it's the way Aniah's family responded to this tragedy. They could have just focused on their own pain, but they didn't. They wanted justice for Aniah, yeah, but they also wanted to make sure something like this wouldn't happen to anyone else. Aniah's Law, it really could save lives. And that's a legacy that truly honors her memory.
It really does. It shows you how resilient people can be. Even when they're hurting so much, they can find a way to make things better. And Aniah, even though she's gone, she's still making a difference. She's making the world a little safer, a little more caring, a little more aware.
It really does show you that even in the darkest times, there can still be light.
Aniah's story is a powerful reminder to hold our loved ones close, to be aware of what's going on around us, and to never stop fighting for what's right. If you've been touched by this deep dive, please take some time to learn more about Aniah's heart. Maybe think about ways you can help. And don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more stories like this one. Until next time, keep diving deeper.